Dear friends, welcome to the 7th episode of Holiness in the Pauline family. Till now, in this episode, we have met Blessed James Alberione, founder of the Pauline family, Venerable Thecla Merlo, co-foundress of the Daughters of St. Paul, Venerable Scholastica Rivata, First Mother General of the Pious Disciples of the Divine Master, Blessed Timothy Jacardo, First Priest of the Society of St. Paul, and two young Paulines, Venerable Maggiorino Vigulongo and Servant of God Andrew Borello. All of them have left behind fragrance of their holy life and are in the process of canonization. Today, we shall meet Canon Francisco Chiesa, whom we, the members of the Pauline family, consider as the godfather of our family. He was born in Monte di Alba, Cuneo, on April 2nd, 1874, in an atmosphere of great faith. His parents were Lorenzo Chiesa and Teresa Aloy. He entered first in the pre-seminary of Turin, where conditions were very hard. In 1886, at the age of 12, he joined the seminary of Alba and completed his studies in philosophy and theology. He was ordained a priest on 11th October 1896, and in the same year began to teach philosophy in the seminary of Alba. Ordination and other responsibilities in the seminary did not prevent him from pursuing higher studies. He completed his doctoral studies in theology in Geneva, ecclesiastical and civil law in Turin in 1900, and philosophy in Rome in 1901. He was no doubt a man of learning, open to the signs of the times, formator of priests and teacher of holiness. But above all, he was a priest of rare virtue and a true father of all parishioners. We call him Godfather because our founder James Alberione absorbed a great measure of spirit from Canon Chiesa. He was the spiritual director of Blessed James Alberione and his companions. As the time went by, he became a role model for Alberione. Young Alberione admired him so much that he began to imitate this saintly personality even in his external mannerisms. As a professor, Canon Chiesa was aware of the clerics who were avid readers and devoured even the forbidden books. This came to a halt when Canon Chiesa was entrusted with the School of Dogmatic Theology. He placed at the service of students his vast learning to inform them about these doctrinal novelties, thus freeing them from dangerous curiosity. It also helped to orient the seminarians in their reading and rendering them more fruitful in their lives. Canon Francisco Chiesa used to preserve every bit of notes he wrote, including his train tickets and newspapers. In this regard, he was just opposite of Blessed James Alberione, who would destroy all his notes. Later, these notes of Canon Chiesa became sources of information about him, about his intellectual search for a synthesis of the sciences. In 1932, he published a book named Towards Unity in the Formation of the Clergy, wherein he explained his thought. According to Canon Chiesa, the identification of unification of all sciences is in God, but for the founder of the Pauline family, James Alberione, the unifying center is Jesus Master, way, truth and life. Both were accompanied by this thought during the entire course of their lives. Alberione wrote in his autobiography that he learned from Canon Chiesa to transform everything into subjects of prayer and meditation before the Divine Master, to adore, thank, atone and supplicate. Following the request of Father Alberione, Canon Chiesa wrote a book entitled Jesus Master in 1926. The book responded to a wish of Alberione to have a first organic arrangement of the doctrine on Jesus Master. This book becomes a first synthesis on Jesus Master for Father Alberione. Canon Chiesa's book entitled Jesus Christ the King, which he wrote in 1926, made references to man as mind, will and heart, which is at the heart of Pauline spirituality. As we said earlier, Canon Chiesa influenced the life of Alberione in a great measure. Alberione described him. Those words, so simple yet sublime, those acts so pure in their candor, that spirit, that happiness which surrounds his existence. Does it not fill you with love, steel your heart, give you a holy kind of envy? His will is strong and unbending. His intellect is always fresh, active and full of light. His eyes, which fill with tears whenever his glance is directed towards heaven. What peace and happiness! Canon Chiesa was indeed an extraordinary priest. Father Alberione, as a seminarian, was bubbling with initiatives, and he would seek light, suggestions and support from Canon Chiesa in order to transform them into activities as soon as possible. Thus, he spoke often with his spiritual director, whom he met every day. In the seminary, Alberione was able to read in a disciplined manner and channel it to a precise goal, following a method suggested by Canon Chiesa. Being with the Canon Chiesa and following his examples and directives, Alberione also developed and consolidated within himself a vigorous sense of duty. Some common elements we notice between Canon Chiesa and Alberione are their desire to go beyond mediocrity, love for learning, use of time, profound conviction about one's dependence on God, love of Eucharist, Mother Mary, and church. Another characteristic of the servant of God's piety was his devotion to the Virgin, which was not only deeply felt but known and almost visible in the whole environment in which he moved. He was convinced that a tender devotion to the Blessed Virgin was indispensable for many reasons, but mainly for faithfulness in one's priestly vocation. When Canon Chiesa was appointed parish priest at Saints Damien and Cosmos, he organized catechetical courses enabling young men and women to teach catechism in the parishes. In fact, several youth trained by him entered the congregations founded by Blessed James Alberione. He was held in high honor and respect by all the members of the Pauline family. When James Alberione took days of fasting and prayer in the beginning of the congregation, the young pioneers used to be worried and puzzled. Canon Chiesa, who knew Alberione, would calm them, saying, "Do not worry, leave him alone." And after the days of prayer, Alberione would come out with more inspirations and initiatives, which he would share first with Canon Chiesa. Canon Chiesa contributed a number of manuscripts to Alberione's new printing establishment. Alberione would give him a subject or a theme, and the messenger arrived with a manuscript to Alberione, who would accept it and hand over to him a note with another topic for the next book. According to the biographer Luigi Rolfo, Canon Chiesa wrote more than 100 books on various topics, besides the innumerable articles he wrote for various journals. He had an exquisite artistic sense which allowed him to invent a whole series of fictional characters for the titles, subtitles, and initial part of his writings. Canon Chiesa was in fact an erudite priest who could contribute in various subjects. Leaving an indelible mark in the lives of all those who met him, he entered his eternal reward on 14th June 1946. The parishioners of Saints Cosmos and Damien, the Paulines, and the several well-wishers from around the city paid him respect for 3 days. He was interred in the cemetery of Alba. Later, his mortal remains were transferred to the temple of Saint Paul at Alba. Welcoming the requests of the diocesan priests, Paulines, and people from his own hometown, Father Alberione accepted to pursue the process of the cause of beatification of his beloved friend and teacher. In 1987, recognizing his heroic virtues, Canon Francisco Chiesa was declared venerable. The erudite, amicable, and humble priest inspired Blessed James Alberione and accompanied him to begin the various institutes of the Pauline family. May the road he walked to holiness in humility and simplicity inspire each of us to follow His steps in our journey to Jesus, our Divine Master.